Hello. It's not surprising that most handicapped people want to live at home and to lead as normal a life as possible, as part of the community. But there are a number of barriers which often prevent this from happening. For example, there are physical barriers, such as a lack of suitable housing, and we'll be looking at the question of housing later in the program. But perhaps it's public attitudes towards handicapped people which create the biggest obstacles. We asked Dr. Kenneth Day, a consultant psychiatrist, about these.
Firstly, there's fear of the unknown. Then there's the stigma, because unfortunately in the past the publicity the handicapped have had has been by and large bad publicity. The only time one hears about the handicapped, very often in the media, is when something's gone wrong or when they've done something wrong. And then there's embarrassment. People are embarrassed by handicap. We are, as a nation, schooled to think towards normality, in fact, super-normality. All the advertisements for cosmetics and so on, the emphasis on keeping fit, keeping slim. A lot of the bombardment of advertisement we get in our lives is towards normality, and people are very embarrassed by abnormality. And then a rather more subtle problem is, as a nation, I think, we feel we must be involved and help others. And I think that a lot of members of the public don't, for instance, want a handicapped person living beside them or in their street or something, because they feel they may have to help them, and that this would cause them a lot of embarrassment, so that they put up the shutters, as it were, because they feel that they're bound to get involved, but they don't really want to.
Well, we went to look at a housing scheme which enables a group of handicapped and able-bodied people to live together in purpose-built accommodation. It's called the Grove Road Scheme, and we spoke first to one of the disabled tenants, Rolf Collins.
The Grove Road Housing Scheme is a group or block of 6 flats, 3 ground floor flats tenanted by disabled people, and 3 upstairs flats tenanted by helping families, which provide help for the disabled tenants on the ground floor. The Grove Road scheme took 4 years to complete. The original idea came from Ken and Maggie Davis.
Ken and Maggie are both tetraplegic and formerly lived in a residential institution for some years. What was the idea behind the Grove Road scheme?
The basic idea was to provide a way whereby severely physically handicapped people could live in their own home in the community. Certainly Maggie and myself were very much personally involved. I mean, we wanted to get married and we needed a house of our own, and we certainly couldn't envisage for ourselves living as a married couple in an institution. So we had to find a way of duplicating the accommodation and care arrangements which exist in institutions, but in a normal community setting. It's amazing how chance or luck or fate, if you like, plays a hand in a business like this. We didn't really know how to set about achieving what we wanted to achieve at all. I mean, for instance, I didn't even know what a housing association was, nor did Maggie. And it was by chance that we went to a meeting in London, and there we met the director of the Inskip St Giles Housing Association, as it then was. It's now Raglan Housing Association, and you know, he offered us his help if we ever got into a position of finding a piece of land and getting the background to this idea that ordinary able-bodied people would be willing to live in a sufficiently close association with disabled people to provide them with the help that they needed at the time that they needed it. He invited us to get back to him. That was a very important chance encounter. So subsequently we were able to find a piece of land, this particular corner plot, which was occupied by the St Bartholomew's Mission Church, but not used at that time for that purpose. And the parochial church council subsequently agreed to the sale of the land to the housing association. Now, when we'd reached that stage, we were in the position of being able to talk over with the director of the housing association what was required and how we could go about it and what principles were involved. One of those principles was that we thought that disabled people themselves should work in collaboration with the architect on points of design.
One of the design features is an intercom system linking all the flats.
Yeah. Alex, it's Maggie here. I wonder, would you mind coming down and opening a can of beans and collecting some potatoes for me, love?
All right, Maggie.
Thanks very much, love. After spending so long in an institution, which was approximately 10 years for myself, and altogether, all of us, 25, 27 years, I ascertained in 1974 that we would need approximately 31.5 hours per week help from our helping families. Oh, great. Yeah. That's the kind of beans there. In actual fact, on our first week that we moved in, it was 8 hours we called upon, and now we call upon our helping families for approximately an hour to an hour and a half per week, which is very, very little at all.
By mutual agreement among all the tenants, a payment system has evolved whereby the disabled tenants pay the helping families for assistance given. We asked why Maggie had originally overestimated the amount of help required.
Yeah, just shove it on there, that's fine. I think the reason that we ascertained for 31.5 hours was the fact that in institutions one tends to get such blanket covering, you know, helping on and off the loo, helping getting up in the morning, helping get dressed. You get so dependent on the staff that you really think in the end that you're going to need this help. Where in actual fact, you know, if you're in a flat which is equipped properly with a hoist and other relevant equipment, you can do so many things on your own that you just don't need to call on the helping families.
The electric hoist is a key piece of equipment. Not having the use of one's hands makes it a little difficult to operate the switch cords. Good job I've got a full set of teeth. It's been around a long time, but no one ever really thought about this kind of application, I think. Certainly, for the first time in 10 years, Maggie was able to transfer from her wheelchair to the loo and break the soul-destroying routine of every 3 hours being helped by some other person.
Initially, Ken and Maggie estimated that in addition to help from the families upstairs, they would need 4 hours assistance each week from the home help service and 2 hours from the district nurse. How has this worked out in practice?
We discovered that the help that we thought we'd need from the district nurse, in actual fact, we don't need. But she's very supportive and will bring us anything that we do need, you know, any dressings or paper sheets, cotton wool, anything that I like to call her up on. She'll bring that around with no trouble at all. But in actual fact of her coming to do anything else physical, she doesn't, you know. But from the home help, she comes in once a week for 2 hours. And that's all. And that's really mainly to do work which I just can't do, and that's floors, windows, things that are completely out of my reach. But that's the limit of it.
He's a good boy.
Jonathan Lindsay is the youngest resident. He lives in one of the ground floor flats with his parents John and Ruth. Ruth is also a tetraplegic. But for the scheme, she and Jonathan would be on their own, while John, who is able-bodied, was at work.
Oh, dear.
With a scheme like this, there's always help around. Somebody's upstairs with the helping families. And although I only need it just for small items, with me having the baby as well, it gives me that security. With Jonathan, I do manage him myself to change his nappies and everything, but I just might need that help, and I know it's always there. And of course the kitchen's wonderful because I wanted to cook and get things done, but if you haven't got the right height, we can get underneath and cut up vegetables and prepare and manage boiling water to get on and off the sink and across to the stove and empty. And the kitchen, as you can see, is the right height, so therefore it's ideal to manage all these things on my own. And I found I could get the stuff in and out of the oven as well. And with John at work, he doesn't have to worry about me with anything happening, whether I fall out of my chair or burn myself, because he knows that there is somebody there who can call up and do if I can't manage myself. And also it takes the strain, I think the mental strain in homes, with a family living together, a son and maybe his mother-in-law, father looking after him, they're having to be there all the time, where with us, John can come home and relax in the evening and just do the tiny things, which obviously when he's here, we're not going to ask for help outside. So it just takes the strain off all round with John, Jonathan and myself.
Want you to do it, Beth.
Yeah, all right then, if it's a little
Claire lives upstairs. She and all the other children in the building also lend a hand from time to time.
Put some bubbles in it.
We spoke to Claire's parents and to the other upstairs tenants.
Ken answered an advert that we had in the paper. We came here and saw him, got to know everyone and how the scheme worked. We had a lot of thought on the subject before we finally made our minds up that we would come, and we have no regrets.
At first I thought, no, I couldn't do it. And then Maggie gave me a book to read about their disability, and basically after I had read that I realised it's only common sense. 99% of it is common sense. And the help given is only putting on socks and shoes, peeling potatoes, opening tins, changing beds, things like that.
The first week I wasn't sure what was expected. I sort of sat around waiting for somebody to buzz the intercom. Then I was nervous the first time because I've never done anything nursing, except in looking after my husband when he was taken ill, but never anything for disabled people. And then after the first couple of weeks, it just sort of come naturally to me, putting on shoes, going shopping for them. And they've been good to me this year because I've had an operation on my eye, and they've been good to my daughter. And we help one another.
We do a rota. And say if I was on today, possibly I wouldn't have to do anything, but it's just being around in case they need someone urgently. There's not really very much we do have to do. They're very independent. But as I say, it's just really having someone around in case they need something.
I think, you know, the basis of the support that we have here is definitely orientated to sort of equal inter-tenant cooperation. There are no chiefs, no Indians.
The tenants have built into their tenancy agreements a cooperation clause which stipulates that they must provide some degree of help and is a prerequisite for obtaining a flat in this scheme. We have a tenants association which has frequent meetings. The meetings are conducted on a semi-formal basis, although the minutes of the meeting are actually recorded.
How much is that for the children then, Ken? Is it half price or you know?
I'm afraid I don't know what the position is with regard to the children. Maggie, did you have a reply from them?
Yes, they did. And children up to the age of 11 are 2/3 the cost of the adult meal. And I've just worked it out on the calculator, and it's £4.53 per head for children.
So it's sorted out, basically.
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice.
Can't do that, can it? Really.
When we first moved into Grove Road, various people had ideas about it. They thought it was an old people's home, a rehabilitative home, and various other ideas cropped up because the people down the street had no idea what it was.
But the scheme has been operating now for over 3 years, and it's very much part of the local community. Shirley Hayward is one of the neighbours.
We try to help as much as we can. I wash Ken's jeans when I'm washing my husband's and my son's. And the children are always wanting to help in any way they can. In the shopping, you know, going to the local shops and helping to wash pots and things like that.
Now the scheme is actually on the ground and working. The whole of Nottinghamshire are interested. In fact, the country seems to be interested. Because it is here and it is working, so they cannot deny that it's anything but a success.
I think it's a good idea that such buildings have been built like this, and that disabled people shouldn't be shut away in institutions. They should be living in places like this, like ordinary people in their own homes.
So can a scheme like this be a model for the future? And for that matter, what kinds of other possibilities are there? To help us answer these questions, we've invited John Stanford to join us. He's the housing officer of RADAR, the Royal Association for Disability and Rehabilitation. John, firstly, can you tell us what types of housing are available for disabled people?
Housing comes into two types, really. Mobility housing, which is just ordinary housing with slight adaptations at the time of building, and what's called wheelchair housing, similar to the flats in Grove Road, which have actually been designed for people who are totally confined to a wheelchair for their mobility. Having said that, there is usually the need for particular changes to be made to a house for an individual. These can be in various forms. There are some schemes where just a few wheelchair flats, for instance, are scattered among very many more houses. There are some schemes by which accommodation for disabled people is linked to, say, a sheltered housing scheme that is mainly occupied by elderly people.
Would this include mentally handicapped people?
There's no reason why it couldn't, but generally it doesn't. Another form of accommodation, which certainly does apply to mentally handicapped people, is what's called group homes, whereby a small number of people are living together in an ordinary house.
We saw how Ken and Maggie had the help of a housing association. How does this work?
Well, housing associations are voluntary bodies which use public money to provide accommodation to rent. Therefore, the tenants of a scheme pay rent. They don't have to make any other financial contribution. The housing association borrows money from either local authorities or from a government-funded agency, the Housing Corporation, to build the schemes.
Do the tenants have to find a deposit?
No, not at all.
And what about local authority housing? Is that being developed?
It's being developed, but chance was mentioned during the film earlier, and it really is a lottery. It depends very much where you live as to how much attention your local authority has paid to this question.
How can you find out about the help that is available?
Firstly, make inquiries locally. This is assuming you know where you want to live. From the local authority, a social worker if you're in touch with one to start off with, certainly the Social Services Department or the Housing Department should know which housing associations are operating in their area. Failing that, and particularly in the case of people who either don't want to live in a particular area or want to move somewhere else, we are very happy at RADAR to provide what help we can in terms of pointing people in the right direction, giving addresses, etc.
Obviously, many people will need to have housing adaptations made to their homes. How do they go about getting this type of assistance?
Depends to some extent who owns their home. If they are the tenant of a local authority, or indeed a private tenant, the responsibility lies with the landlord, the local authority. If they own their own homes, then assistance can be available. Again, the starting point would be the Social Services Department. Very many Social Services Department have occupational therapists who will come along and assist and help you get any grants that may be available.
If there is a problem in getting adaptation grants, can one get another type of grant, say an improvement grant? Is that available to disabled people?
Improvement grants are available to disabled people, particularly for features that they need because they are disabled, as well as anything they need otherwise. But there are still at present limitations on that. There is a restriction, for instance, on the amount of the rateable value of your house. But certainly always apply, always ask for improvement grants.
And it is a substantial grant, isn't it?
Yes, the grant covers up to 50% of the allowed cost.
And what about rent and rate rebates? Could RADAR advise people on this issue?
Yes, we can. There is assistance with relief from rates for disabled people for the features, again, which are particularly related to their disability.
John Stanford, thank you very much indeed. If you want to find out more about housing, we've prepared a leaflet giving further details about the things we've talked about in this programme, and also a list of voluntary organisations. If you'd like a copy, please send a large stamped addressed envelope to this address: The Handicapped Family, BBC Television, London, W12 8QT. The Handicapped Family, BBC Television, London, W12 8QT. Don't forget to send a large stamped addressed envelope, and please write the word housing on it. Next week we'll be concentrating mainly on the needs of elderly disabled people. Join us then if you can. But before we sign off today, let's go back to the question of public attitudes and how these can be changed, because after all, these are at the root of most problems faced by disabled people. Dr. Day.
Really, the change in attitude of the public is a matter of slow evolution. Obviously, better education and publicity and propaganda have got their role to play. But really the most important thing is that the general public actually experience the handicapped living amongst them as community members. It is, as it were, that integration paves the way for even greater and better integration.